Hello, welcome to Perfume. I'm Emily here again today with Twixie. And today I'm continuing my series on Britney Spears' fantasy line. I've got Festive Fantasy for you today to review. And I'll also give you an update on progress with my chemotherapy. If you saw my last video, Sunset Fantasy, I think it was, review, I also revealed that I had a breast cancer diagnosis in my armpit and that I'm undergoing chemotherapy. I just finished my third treatment, 3 out of 6 of them last Thursday, and I feel like it's getting easier over time, but I'll go into that a little more later. First, Festive Fantasy. So this is a smaller bottle, but you can still get this. This is released in 2020 in the Fragrance Net site has the large size, the 3.4 ounce bottle of this, which is pretty little colored blue, green, pink, kind of rainbow fantasy festive. And that one, they say its retail is $35, but they have it with the coupon for $21.59. So it's on clearance. Who knows how long it'll last. They seem to kind of come and go pretty quickly with this fantasy range sometimes. So pick it up if you want to check it out. I'll tell you what I think about it. So this one, Festive Fantasy, gets better reviews than I expected it to, honestly, based on my experience. But maybe that's just because my palate doesn't tend to lean quite as sweet as this is. I think it's a very fruity, sweet fruity fragrance. Like it definitely has equal parts sugariness and fruitiness. So like a candy coated fruit. Start with the notes up here. So top notes are dewberry, sour cherry, and plum. So again with that plum note, but that one is kind of taking a back seat to the sour cherry and the dewberry. And I think the dewberry is a nice, interesting fruit note. The middle is freesia, lily, and jasmine. And that's also a good compliment, I think, to the top. Kind of simple. I like that it's not too complicated. And the freesia, I think, is the prominent floral in those three for sure. With a little bit of the lily and jasmine to complement that. So I'm getting mostly like dewberry, sour cherry, freesia. And in the base, that sugar is pretty strong. So sugar, vanilla, musk, and sandalwood. So altogether, kind of a like not moderately complex, not super simple, but not overly complicated fragrance. And my fiance liked it when I wore it. He said this was a good one, so let's spray a little bit. I'm not sure where the festive comes in. Like, I sort of think about, pine or, I don't know, something holiday related, but I don't really get a holiday theme note or notes in this. It is very, like, fruity, bright. It's good for summer and spring, but you don't need a lot. It actually has pretty good longevity. So you could go light on it in the summer and spring. And I think it would even hold up in like 60-degree weather, kind of a summer to fall transition fragrance or winter to spring. I think it's okay. My personal opinion, I feel like the notes are nice. I mean, generally, I think it's a pretty good composition. It definitely gets pretty good reviews on Fragrantica. Over 4, it was like, I think 4.17 when I looked out of 5, which is pretty high. And in the Fragrance Net reviews, they were all 5 stars. There were only 6 of them, but they were all, people really enjoyed it when they bought it, even blind buy. And some people said they get a pineapple note in it. I can see that. I mean, the sweetness of it is really prominent. So it can kind of mimic a pineapple, even if that's not an actual note listed. So, yes, Festive Fantasy. For me, I'd give it like 6.5 out of 10, but a lot of people actually like it a lot better than that, especially if your preferences tend towards sweeter fragrances. Trixie snoring. So I hope you can hear me okay. My voice is a little shoddy still. It feels like just after I get the chemo, the impact to my vocal cords is most noticeable. So that's what we're getting today. So yeah, I'll just bring you up to speed if you haven't heard already. I think it was about September, I started having some issues and I went into the hospital or to the doctor to get a checkup about the issues, and they said, we want an ultrasound. I was thinking that I had like a fluid-filled cyst or something that I've had like a minor version of before, and maybe it had reoccurred and gotten bigger. It was causing some bruising. It was pretty ugly. So they said, okay, we want you to do an ultrasound. And when I got the ultrasound, they said that the ultrasound was kind of not communicated well. It was all over the place, and I didn't feel really comfortable with how they shared the information with me. It seemed inconsistent, like different people were telling me different things, and they said they wanted to do a biopsy right away, but they didn't, like the doctor who made that decision didn't talk to me, and the ultrasound technician told me that there was nothing there, but they just wanted to do a biopsy anyway, and so that kind of freaked me out. So I was like, I'm gonna wait on that. I was like, I'll do another ultrasound, and I started treating it every day with castor oil. I would just put it on the affected area, and it was mostly in my left breast, actually not in the armpit that I noticed at that point. But the castor oil over a couple weeks, and I would take pictures and kind of like track the progress, it actually made all of the visible symptoms subside. So at the point where they had scheduled the second ultrasound for me, it looked normal. But they did mention in the first ultrasound that they noticed the lymph nodes were swollen. So that a friend of mine said, you know, if it's lymph nodes involved, it's probably something serious. And I was like, yeah, it might be. So when I got the second ultrasound and I saw that the lymph nodes were still kind of angry, there were several lymph nodes that were bigger. They said they saw a 7 millimeter mass in the breast, and they wanted to biopsy both spots. And I said, okay. At this point, I was kind of like starting to be not in denial that it could be cancer. And I realized that I had been using that device right where all of the lymph nodes were impacted. And I've been using that device for, I'm not even sure how long, like a year or two, maybe, probably 18 months, give or take 6 months, I'll say. And so I thought about it and I was like, yeah, that's possible. It's definitely possible, because I was just testing it out. This laser hair removal device, this IPL home handheld device. I won't mention the manufacturer right now because I'm considering bringing a lawsuit. But I put 2 and 2 together and I said, okay, yeah, I'll biopsy this. And they biopsied both the mass in the breast and the lymph nodes. And they said there is no malignancy in the breast, but there is in the lymph nodes. So at that point I was like, oh, okay, now I have cancer. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm just gonna kind of do what they tell me to do. And I've had very healthy, young, active friends who've gotten cancer. One who got breast cancer in her mid-30s, and she passed away. And at that point, that was, I'm not even sure, 8 years, maybe 9 or 10, 8 to 10 years ago. I can't remember exactly. Thankfully, medicine has advanced since then. They also told me the type. It was low estrogen positive, I think progesterone negative, and HER2 positive. And they said that's kind of a good and bad thing. The HER2 positive means that it's an aggressive form. My oncologist said if you don't treat it aggressively, it can spread to your brain and that it will kill you. So the good news, however, is that they had developed for the HER2 positive type a very effective medicine called Herceptin, which is an immunotherapy drug. But they want to do both the chemotherapy and the immunotherapy concurrently, so that if it had metastasized in to any places that were not detectable on the scans that they did, because they did a bone scan, they did like a heart scan to see if my heart was strong enough for the chemo, and then they did MRI to check for any metastasis of the cancer already, and they didn't see anything that had spread and gotten to the level of being detectable on the ultrasound. But they said they still want to do the chemotherapy because it may be metastasized, but just very small. And so the chemotherapy would attack it anywhere it might have traveled. And that made sense to me, even though chemotherapy is like the worst. You never want to go through that if you can avoid it. But, you know, I just said, okay, well, I'm pretty strong. I'm feeling pretty healthy. I mean, generally it's a little bit weird because you're like, I'm sick, but I feel fine. Like my energy is fine. Everything else feels fine. There was a slight, like you could tell it was there. I could tell it was there. It was detectable. And when it was initially showing symptoms before the castor oil kind of helped to remove the swelling and the bruising and everything healed up, it was a little painful, but after that, the symptoms were really mild, and every once in a while I could feel it. I would notice it in my armpit, but for the most part, it was, you know, I'm just feeling fine other than the chemotherapy. So chemotherapy starts, and that, you know, goes well in the moment. You take all the steroids they give you, the anti-nausea medications, the antihistamines to kind of prevent reactions, and all of that went okay. The actual infusion of medicine took about 6 hours the first time, and then after that they speeded up a little bit, and the last two have been about 4 hours, where you just sit there with the IV and they drip the different ones in. They do the immunotherapy first, and then they do the chemotherapy. And I've never had any reactions to those. You know, I fell asleep the last time and that was fine. I had a little nap during it. So that was okay. And then after that, I get kind of low energy for a few days, maybe constipation, although that only happened the first time. And then the second and third time now, I will drink I have a mushroom coffee. I use the Rise mushroom coffee, but I'll put like a half a teaspoon of coconut oil, half a teaspoon of olive oil, and half a teaspoon of castor oil in the mushroom coffee. And that has been knocking out any constipation without issue. So that's awesome. So I figured out kind of the trick right after you get all the chemo and that stuff wants to constipate you. If I drink that little coffee with oil in it, especially the little half teaspoon of castor oil, I think is clutch. No issues with constipation. Then I have maybe some diarrhea for a week, and that, like, you can deal with Imodium AD, they said, and that actually works pretty well. I don't know why they don't recommend Pepto-Bismol, which is what I would usually use, but I just switched to Imodium because they recommended it. And that helps if I need it. You know, it's not terrible. And then after that, I'm taking the probiotic every day, and my digestive system generally returns to normal. But I had after both the first and second infusions, about day 6 after the first infusions and about day 10 after the second infusions, I got mouth sores, and they warned me that was a potential side effect. And the first time it happened, I didn't really they were coming, and I didn't think to maybe go to the urgent care immediately, but it was a couple days and I was traveling, and then they got so bad. Like, they were in the back of my throat to the point where I could not swallow without pain, a good amount of pain. I could not sleep because of the pain. It was so bad that they were on my tongue. Like, my tongue was, I couldn't even see them, but I could feel them all over my tongue and in the front of my mouth, and they were horrible. So I ended up having to cut one of my family trips short to go to the urgent care. I got a course of antivirals for that, because apparently it's your immune system is weakened, and a virus then can kind of go crazy in your mucous membranes, and it was also attacking my nose, so I was getting like nosebleeds, and it was just a mess all around. It was very horrible. Then I called the oncology team, and they said, you need to go to the ER, and I was in Las Vegas, like traveling over the holidays. And I was like, I'm not going to the ER in Vegas. I'm going to go back to California, to Los Angeles, and go to my normal medical system. So I ended up doing that, and that was, I didn't realize it before I went to the ER, about a $500 copay, although the doctor prescribed a better pain medication to help me sleep at night. He gave me refills of like a lidocaine to use before I would try to eat, so it was a little more, you know, endurable, because eating was really, really difficult during that phase. I was just eating just soups, and I made a specific soup that I thought would be good with like protein, and it was like a potato puree, but I didn't even think about I put black pepper in it, so it was still really painful for me to eat it, but I did mostly that. You gotta avoid citrus, you gotta avoid tomatoes, like these things are in so many foods, so it was really challenging. But the antiviral they prescribed eventually did work, and I kind of regained the function of my mouth and started to be able to sleep with the better pain meds I got from the ER. They tested me for shingles. I did not have shingles. That's what the oncology team was worried about, but they didn't test me, but they like know what to look for, and they said they didn't see the real signs of that. So thankfully, that was okay. It was just a hit to my wallet. But the second time around, the mouth sores, I was like, the first time I was eating pineapple during the infusions, because somebody would eat on YouTube said that eating the bromelain and pineapple would actually help to mitigate the risk of the mouth sores, but it didn't really seem to work. I don't know if anybody's had success with that. Let me know. Anybody else who's watching this has seen, anything about that knows. The second time I was like sucking on ice chips because I heard that would help, and maybe it did. Or maybe my immune system just started to learn how to fight it better. But after the second infusions, about day 10, I got another mouth sore coming on, and I went immediately to urgent care. Urgent care copay is much cheaper with Kaiser. And I got the same 10-day course of antivirals, and I started on those. And they didn't get nearly as bad as they did the first time. Like, I had the right side of my mouth that I could eat on pretty well. So I could basically still eat solid foods, just have to chew it on the right side where the sores weren't as bad. I got maybe one for like half a day on the back of my throat, the really bad one. Then it went away, excuse me. And so it got better. And I'm hoping this time that's a trend and it stays better, or maybe they don't even come back. But if they do, like the second I feel that stuff, I go to the ER, or not to the ER, to the urgent care and get that prescription. Yeah, it's no fun. Chemo sucks. That is really the worst of it. I'm thankful they wanted to give me this home injectable medication, and I do not like getting shots. I definitely did not want to do that. And because I'm young and I'm fairly healthy generally, they dropped that from the protocol, so I didn't have to get the Granix shots at home, or I didn't have to give myself Granix shots at home. And my blood levels have been fine, so I think it's okay. I'm glad they didn't give me those, because they have like bone pain and other bad side effects that can come with that. And my blood cell count has been just fine, so I think they're not gonna try to reintroduce that one, thankfully. But yeah, I'm ready to be done. I'm counting the days. I think I've got like 72 or 71 more days until I probably will be free of the chemo impacts. My last treatment will be in early April, and then I'll do a surgery, because they said even though that this Herceptin medicine that works so well for the HER2 positive type can sometimes just melt away the cancer, and they'll go in to do surgery and they won't see anything, which is what I'm hoping for. Then they still take some lymph nodes out because they want to make sure that it doesn't reoccur. So I have to get that done. And then they said the side effect of that could be some arm swelling. So I'm hoping it doesn't happen, or there are ways to mitigate that. Yeah. And then I get to do, I think, 7 more months of radiation therapy, which I heard isn't nearly as bad, fingers crossed. And I think more immunotherapy, which isn't too bad, or hasn't been too bad. So the hair loss, they said, would start like 2 weeks in, and it was like clockwork. Day 13, it started to come out in big patches when it was long, and I was like, shave it off. And I think it's got like a little fuzzy, it's still like chicken fuzzy right now, and I might just take a razor and shave it all off, because I think it would look a little better. I have one wig, and I wear that in my next video. But yeah, anyway, Festive Fantasy. If you like a very sweet, fruity, dewberry, sour cherry, sugary type of fragrance, the Festive Fantasy is on sale on FragranceNet for $21.59. You can get it there with the coupon. And I give it like a 6.5 out of 10. It's my personal opinion. Spring, summer, maybe even into like the 60s. And it lasts a pretty decent longevity for a fruity fragrance. So that's that, and that's me. And thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't. It would be fantastic. Give this a like if you like. It would be fantastic. Give this a like if you liked it. And I will see you in my next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.